This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, thank you. So my name is Rachel Furniss. I work as a seasonal business manager, so working with the seasonal treatment supply chain and the associated fleets. And I work for supply chain operations in route services in Network Rail. So today I've put together a few slides that talk through and give a bit of an overview of our weed spray season. I'll start off with just a little bit of an introduction about myself and how I came to be in this role, what I've done previously, and I've also just put a couple of slides at the end on request just to summarise winter season and autumn season as well. And then obviously if you've got any questions at the end, we can go through them as well. I have asked Ben Kettle from JSD to attend as well. I think I've seen him on. So if there's any questions at the end that are a little bit more technical, Ben is here to help me out as well, hopefully. So I'll start now. Hopefully this will move to the second slide. Okay, so I started working for Network Rail back in 2018. When I came into Network Rail, I worked in the rail supply chain. So I dealt with the suppliers that we procure short and long lengths of rail from. But I also worked with managing the rail delivery fleet. So at the time, that incorporated of a number of trains called the rail delivery trains, and also I think we had about 3 long welded trains as well. And they were responsible for delivering long lengths of rail to the ground and recovering scrap rail. So that involved managing the suppliers, the contracts and the fleet as well. And at the time I was also quite heavily involved in what we called Project Oscar at the time, which was the project set up internally in Network Rail that surrounded the liquidation of British Steel. So that was quite an interesting and exciting project to be part of. And then in October 2020, I moved into my current role in the seasonal team as a business manager. So I'm now responsible for the seasonal fleet operations and maintenance contracts. And those contracts cover the use of the MPVs, which stands for multi-purpose vehicles. And they are responsible for delivering herbicides during the weed spray season. They also then do water jetting during autumn, and they're supported in that delivery by our RHTTs, which are rail head treatment trains. And in winter, we then deploy anti-ice to the third rail. And in that role, I'm also responsible for the supplementary contracts that support seasonal. So that includes product supply, so procurement of herbicides, adhesion modifier and anti-icer. As well as being responsible for the contracts that sit around operational support services. So in autumn, we have a number of suppliers who provide very specific expertise and high-level support with regards to specific parts of our fleet as well. And those contracts sit under myself and my team. And then prior to working in Network Rail, I'd worked in law for 6 years. So that was practicing civil litigation, did family law, and I also did property litigation. And prior to Network Rail, I also worked as a business manager for 3 years with a company who worked alongside the NHS. So, like I say, today I'm going to talk through primarily weed spray. We've got some changes this year in relation to how we're going to deliver weed spray, and that's around a new train that we've got that comes into use this year. It's been designed specifically for Network Rail and weed spray specifically. So I'll talk through a little bit about that. I have got a video that I'm going to attempt to try and show you. My technological skills are not amazing, but I have been told how to do it, so hopefully it works. And like I say, I will do a few slides on our other services at the end as well for you. So just in terms of an overview of weed spray then. So we've got, the easiest way to summarise it is probably 2 treatments that we deliver during the season. So the first one we refer to as first treatment, and that is where 100% of running rails are treated. So all the track is treated. I should probably add actually, what I'm going to talk to you about today, because I'm from a supply chain operations perspective, everything I talk about in relation to weed spray is from a national programme delivery perspective. So we manage the national programme within the centre, so within supply chain operations. There are obviously then some weed spray programs that are managed within the routes, so where they would have their own hand spray teams, for example, and they might procure some herbicides directly. I'm not going to talk about that today. What I'm talking about is where we treat the national programme, and that's primarily delivered via, like I say, the MPVs at the moment, with an element of hand spray. So in terms of the treatments that we do, the first treatment, like I say, treats 100% of the running rails, and that's done on an annual basis, so every year. And the treatment that we deliver includes a residual and an emergent contact herbicide. So the emergent contact herbicide kills a growing plant, and the residual prevents the seed from germinating. A residual herbicide is one that stays in the ground for up to 3 months and prevents germination up to that period. The treatment speed that we deliver first treatment at is 30 miles an hour, and we also will treat restricted sites with glyphosate only. The restricted sites are updated annually. They are taken by JSD, who act on behalf of Network Rail, not only as our basis advisors, but also to do the planning and management of the weed spray plan. They will look at those updates on an annual basis and incorporate that into the weed spray plan to make sure that we are obviously not spraying where we shouldn't be spraying. We also then do what's called a scrub treatment. Now, at the same time we deliver scrub treatment, we also deliver what's called second track treatment. And what that is all restricted sites that were treated in first spray with glyphosate only receive a second treatment of glyphosate only as well, but it's undertaken at the same time as scrub. So primarily the two treatments really are first treatment and scrub treatment. The scrub treatment's a little bit different. We tend to treat up to 50% of the route mileage, and that is requested by the routes. So the routes would tend to get involved in helping put that plan together. They can request above 50% of treatment, but that would be done on best endeavours. So we always say to them, we'll aim to do up to 50%. And the treatment speed for that service is 20 miles an hour, so a little bit slower. And both of those treatments delivered by train are supplemented by our hand spray programme as well. That is a contract that's delivered through a company called Weedspray. And they will go out and they will pick up areas that the train is unable to treat, and they treat with a knapsack and a spray nozzle and deliver the treatment that way. So normally our first treatment commences around the end of March and will run till roughly the end of June. It is going to be slightly longer this year as we're looking to bring in our new Beyer trains, which I'll talk about in the next few slides. And we're going to be running the Beyer trains alongside the MPVs. So what will happen in 2022 is the Beyer trains will treat for slightly longer than the MPVs have done in the past, and they'll continue to deliver the first spray whilst the MPVs come off, move over to delivering scrub spray, which usually commences around July time. So in terms of treatment, we spray the 4 foot and the 6 foot. The MPV can treat the 10 foot, but only when requested, and that is only with glyphosate. We then have the scrub treatment, which treats bankside, so obviously up the side of the rails, and that uses a slightly different product, which cannot be used on ballast. So that's a broadleaf weed killer, which does not kill grasses. And as I've put on there, we obviously select and use herbicides for Network Rail that are all approved and in accordance with the relevant legislation and regulations. And as I've just noted there as well, like I mentioned, Ben from JSD is on as well. JSD are Network Rail's nominated basis advisors for the national programme. So they support us in the selection of herbicides, and they provide us with advice in relation to the herbicides and deploying them as well. So let's move on. I've then just put together here, this is a bit of an overview of treatment in 2021. So what you can see on there is the green bars are the planned miles that we have planned to treat, and the red bars are what we actually treated. And you can see this incorporates an overview of all the treatments, so first treatment and scrub treatment, and it runs from the start of April, right, I think up to the end of August. So in 2021, we treated 28,200 miles in total. In comparison to 2020, that was an additional 2,400 miles. And we also did 2,063 miles treated by hand spray, which is more than double in 2020. And what I would say is we do obviously experience some failures when we go out and deliver circuits for weed spray. That can be fleet failures, or it can be as a result of adverse weather conditions or possessions, for example, preventing delivery. And over the last 3 years, we usually average anywhere between 95 to 98% of planned treatment miles are delivered. So it's a relatively high performance percentage that we run at for weed spray. And those sites that are missed can be picked up with hand spray treatment via our national contract or by the route teams. So we try to make sure that wherever we can, we've treated everything we plan to treat. So I'm now just going to talk a little bit about the fleet. So at the moment, we currently have got a fleet of 8 MPVs. So that photograph there is an MPV with weed spray modules on it. And the MPVs currently deliver both the first treatment and the scrub treatment for Network Rail. We are introducing what you'll hear probably referred to as the Beyer train. You might also hear it called the Smart Weed Spray System. And that's coming into service in 2022. That's a new type of train, like I said, that's been designed for Network Rail and for weed spray. And with those trains coming into service in 2022, we will look to reduce the number of MPVs that we use to deliver weed spray from 8 down to 4 for first treatment. But what we'll do is we'll keep the other MPVs for contingency, just in case they're needed. So the MPVs deliver a really highly accurate and consistent service for Network Rail. They've been used for, I think, nearly on 30 years now. So they're a good, reliable asset. However, they also deliver autumn and winter seasons as well. So they're quite heavily used throughout the year. And the intention really with bringing the Beyer trains in is to give the MPVs a little bit of respite. And I'll talk through some of the planned efficiencies in coming slides by using the Beyer trains and bringing them in to support the MPVs. So on the next slide, I've just put together here a schematic of the Beyer train. Just bear with me. So as you can see, this is a visual of what the new Beyer train will look like. So it's top and tailed, loco hauled, with 3 modular wagons in the middle. So you've got the herbicide storage tank where the herbicides are held. You've got an operation module in the middle where the operators work from, and that's got a full onboard welfare unit. And then you've got the water tanks as well on the far right there. So the locos allow the train to be bi-directional. It's planned to be hauled by GBRF, as you can see there from the diagram, and they will be subcontracted to Beyer. So these wagons are actually being leased to Network Rail through Beyer, and Beyer will provide a turnkey service, which is a little bit different to the way the MPVs operate at the moment, because the MPVs are assets owned by Network Rail. So this is it's a panoramic photograph of the train. Andrew did ask me if it goes around corners, but it's just a photograph that I was able to take to get the whole of the train in one picture. So you can see there the locos at each end. You've got the herbicide tank on the far left, the operator module right in front of you there with the glass panels, and then on the right you've got the 2 water tanks as well. So technically this train can deliver slightly faster treatment speeds in comparison to the MPV, with a stipulated speed of 33 miles an hour compared to your 30 for the MPV. You've got an increased herbicide and water capacity, so this train can carry 4 lots of 1,000 litres of herbicide and a water capacity of 53,000 litres. And technically it can treat for longer without returning to the depot. So obviously the treatment speeds and the ability to be out for longer is depending on the pathing. So there are some limiting factors that will probably come from Network Rail and the planning side that might affect that. There's also technological developments with this train in relation to GIS data, which I will let the video talk through. So I'm just going to play the start of the video simply because it gives a really good view of the way in which the train has been trialled over at Severn Valley Railway, and some of the things that they've looked at through Beyer. So this is where my technological skills come into play, and hopefully this will work. I have to do some weird skip of adverts here, so I do apologise. This is so if you can't hear this, someone just shout at me relatively quickly.
Some say that a weed is just a flower in the wrong place, but if you're operating a railway, weeds can be a very serious problem indeed. They get everywhere, in the switchgear, the track bed, they even manage to seed themselves in the infrastructure. Enter the Smart Weed System Train, a joint project from DB Rail Freight, Network Rail, Beyer Environmental Science and several other high-tech partners. It's going to revolutionise weed control on the UK's rail network, and it's on test here at the SBR.
Where I'm situated is the seat of the operator manager. This is the seat where he will control the herbicide tanks level and the parameters before departure, what product he wants, with which pump and where he wants to apply the product. Which nozzle he wants to switch on and configure that, and always have a quick look on all those parameters during the trip. In this seat we also have the display that forecasts the forward view of the track, and also the joysticks that always give manual control of the nozzles and the spray system in case the automatic system needs to be controlled by the operators. We also have the GPS that gives the situation on the track, so the restricted area, but also the areas where we'll spray the herbicides.
So here we have all the spraying system. So we have 4 herbicide tanks with 1,000 liters capacity. So this is where we will fill the product, the herbicides that will be applied on the tracks. And basically we have a big water pump that pumps the water from the water tank and then gets it diluted with the herbicides to make the good dosage. And basically what we have in our left is all the dosing system, which actually gives the product to different zones where we want to apply it. And there are several, obviously, mixing pumps, dosing pumps, and electrovalves that will control all the different features of the train.
We are testing our spray system, making sure we can spray in spot application, and for the spot application we are trying different areas, so track, ballast shoulder and bankside, and we'd like to make sure that all the weeds in the different areas will be detected and sprayed.
So why have you laid these cloths down?
So we have laid on a tarpaulin because they are natural weeds already, and when there are weeds, our system is automatically opening and spraying everything. So as we want to try our spot application, we need to remove those green background, and just display some weeds at some points to test the spot application.
Now, what you've got in your hand there doesn't exactly look like a weed to me. Looks suspiciously like parsley.
Yes.
Why are you using that?
So I went to the garden center and they didn't have any natural weeds. So I tried to find something that looks like grass or weeds itself. So I found this beautiful parsley and things.
Now, of course, you're not actually using herbicide on the test, are you?
No.
Tell me why not.
We are using water for the simple reason that now we need to fix our system before being able to use herbicides, so we try everything with water.
Okay. So if I just close that, hopefully, yep, you can see the screen. So the other thing that is worth noting is at the moment, the Beyer train as currently designed can't deliver our scrub spray. So in 2022, although the Beyer trains are being utilised to deliver the first treatment, the MPVs are being retained to deliver the scrub treatment in full. So Beyer are currently looking at the moment to undertake changes and developments to their train in order to allow them to potentially trial a scrub treatment in 2022, and then hopefully successfully deliver the scrub treatment in full in future years. And the main benefit of this is that we'd be able to free up the MPVs during the weed spray season. Like I say, they are used in every season, so to free them up would allow them to have more in-depth maintenance. And like I say, that's really important as the MPVs are aging assets, so they tend to need more maintenance than they used to. And they are used in every season. So unlike the RHTTs, which just support autumn delivery, the MPVs do autumn, winter and weed spray. And we hope that by doing that and allowing them to have that more in-depth maintenance, that will also translate to improved fleet reliability for the MPVs in the other seasons that they work in. So I've just taken some photos there from of the train. Obviously you've seen it within the video, but just so you've got a slightly better view. You've got the operator module there on the left with the glass panels. The design is very similar in a lot of ways to the MPV. And then you've got the water tanks and the herbicide tanks there on the far right. So in terms of operational delivery, I touched on earlier the fact that sometimes we do have shift failures. Like I say, that could be as the result of adverse weather, or it could be the result of a fleet failure. And what JSD do on behalf of Network Rail throughout the weed spray season, as part of their planning and management of the weed spray plan, is they will take any shifts that have been missed and they will look to get those back in the plan to be delivered before the end of the season. And they work very closely with Network Rail capacity planning in order to do that. And like I say, every effort is made to recover the lost mileage, but in the event that's not possible, then we do work with the routes to make sure that any areas of concern are covered as far as we possibly can. And that's the recovery shifts really. On the next slide, I've put together this is actually something I used when I was talking to the routes, but I thought it was probably quite helpful from an overview perspective. This is just a summary really of the process that we use for weed spray. So I've talked through already the fact that the initial plan, particularly for the first treatment, is put together by JSD, but JSD also work with the routes to put together the scrub plan. So that is collated by them. They will obviously look at any restrictions, possessions, etc. That might impact that plan and how it can be delivered. And those circuits are then submitted to Network Rail for validation. They populate what's called a task list for each circuit. So that is essentially a document that says what's going to be sprayed where. It will list out the type of herbicide that's used, where it's used, restricted sites, and have all the information required for the operator to go and deliver that circuit. And obviously alongside that process we'll also be commissioning the MPVs. So for each of the seasons they have slightly different modules, which requires our suppliers to commission them specifically ready for that season. And they obviously are loaded with herbicides in readiness for each circuit as well. When the circuit goes out, the operators will complete the task list, so they will provide the feedback to confirm what took place on the circuit whilst it was out. And that enables a comprehensive and also an auditable method of recording what happened on each shift. So again, the operator will record type of herbicide, location, dosage, volume. They'll also record on that task list any issues that came up whilst they were out doing the circuit. So that might include fleet issues. For example, if a circuit was cancelled due to no driver, that would also be recorded on the task list. So where those issues are recorded, That also then allows us at the end of the season to undertake wider reporting, so we can look at trends or repeated failures, or what caused us to lose the most amount of treatment as well. So that's that. And then that links into the system that is run and managed for us, again by JSD. So the system again collates all the same sort of information. So it will look at the mileage for the circuit, look at the hours for the circuit, but it will also look at the product that's deployed and where that product is deployed, utilising ELRs. So it's really quite specific. And that really comes in handy because we do tend to get quite a lot of freedom of information requests where we can go to the JSD system and we can pull very specific data to respond to those, but also obviously to demonstrate delivery and compliance to the regulations. So the system is very detailed, very thorough, and supports us in delivering that compliance as well, like I say. These on the right are just some extracts from the system and some of the reports that can be pulled, so that they're just examples, and that kind of gives you an overview of the kind of information we have available to us. During the weed spray season, JSD will also undertake surveys for us, and that's in order to monitor the efficacy of treatment. So as you can see there, they will go out and they will do before and after assessments of sites. So usually that's quite random, but sometimes we get requests from the route specifically. So if they've got an area of track that they have particular concern over, or where they think perhaps the herbicide isn't working as it should, and they've got, you know, particular problems. We have had examples this year where they've come to us and said, can JSD specifically do a survey in this area for us? And that's something that they're able to do as well. So they can go and specifically look at areas of concern and monitor the efficacy of treatment prior to and post treatment. And that applies to both the MPV and the hand spray sites as well. So the surveys will include photos, and they also include some data analysis as well. And all of those surveys are again recorded through the JSD system and portal. So again, if we get any questions around specific sites where we've undertaken surveys, we can utilise that as well to support what we're doing in the delivery. So in terms of herbicides, we use a variety of different herbicides depending on the location of treatment, the type of treatment. So like I said, fair spray or scrub spray use slightly different herbicides, and also to some extent the time of year. All of the herbicides that we use are selected based on their approval for use on ballast, and we obviously look to use the most environmentally compliant and friendly herbicides, and we do obviously look at commercial price as well when we procure those. So we do aim to rotate the products to minimise the build-up of resistance. All the herbicides are also used in accordance with their labels and recommended rates. I can't talk too much about this more than I have on this slide, because we do actually currently have a live herbicide tender. So I'm a little bit limited as to what I can say about the types, the specific products of herbicides that we are going to look to use in 2022 and beyond. But that just should give a little bit of an overview there for you. So, moving on to winter, I've tried to just do a few slides here that look at the fleet that we use for winter really. Obviously we still use the MPVs. They work alongside what are called SITs, which is a snow and ice treatment train. And what we do is we'll put the anti-icing modules onto the MPVs for the winter season, and that enables them to deliver the anti-ice to the third rail or conductor rail areas. So we have a reduced programme that we deliver for winter, so we don't treat the whole country because obviously not everywhere has got Conrail. And the services that we deliver with the MPVs and SITs are primarily on southern, so Kent, Sussex and Wessex, and what was L&W North, I think, so Merseyrail. And with the anti-ice, we tend to treat from mid-December to March. There's sometimes some variation in that. So what you might find is this year, for example, where we've had a particularly mild winter, the routes have the ability to cancel some of the services that they have planned. When you have a mild winter, you tend to find that they cancel quite a few of those services. So your season might start a little bit later, or you might just have a few circuits running at the start. And it really is very much weather dependent. Equally, last year we had a particularly bad cold snap, actually sort of March, April time. So it really does just depend on the weather. We currently have 2 products that we use for anti-ice. The first one is produced by a company called L&T Solutions, and that's iStop 4. And the second one we use is Arrow's anti-ice, which is produced by Arrow. And that's solely used on Wessex at the moment. So yeah, they're the anti-ice products we use. In terms of the fleet, like I say, the MPVs and SITs deliver the anti-ice to the Conrail, but we then also have a fleet that deals specifically with snow, so light snow and heavier snow. So for the lighter snow, we tend to use locos all around the country that are fitted with MSPs, which are miniature snow plows. And like I said, that's for low-level snow clearance. There's a lot of those that we have, and they're situated all around the country, and they sit with our suppliers, and they're very easily deployable. We also then have 2 types of plows for deeper snow, and they are our ISPs, which is an independent snow plough, and the Beal hacks. I've got some photos of them on the next slide for you to have a look at. And then we've also got some 2 sort of add-on assets to the fleet, one being the snowblower, which the photographs are of there on the right hand side, and very technically they blow snow out of the way, and they can clear snow up to 8 foot deep. So yeah, quite deep snow, and they, to be fair, they don't really get used very often, but we do have the capability should we need them. And then here on the next slide, this is just some photographs of the bigger ploughs that we have in our fleet. So you've got the ISP on the left there, which has got the bigger snow plough at the front. It's also then got that replicated on the other end of the consist. So you have an ISP at both ends, and then you have a minimum of at least 2 locos in the middle. And the same setup with the Beal hacks there on the right, but as you'll see, the plough on the front is just slightly different. So we can utilise, we have several of those dotted throughout the country, not as many as the MSPs, but we have enough coverage across the UK that should anybody have deep snow, we have the ability to deploy either the ISP or the Beal hacks. And then we have this vehicle as well, which we call the WDV, which stands for Winter Development Vehicle. And that is designed to blow hot air around the running rails, and specifically the points and crossings. And what that does obviously is to melt the snow and ice that can potentially stop the points from working. And it's also equipped with steam lances to melt the more built up stubborn ice deposits. I've only actually been working in seasonal for a year, and so far I haven't actually seen the WDV deployed. However, they were looking to use it in Scotland last year, but they tend to call out the ploughs prior to calling out either the snowblower or the WDV. But like I say, it's there if they need it. And then finally, I'm just going to talk quickly through high level through autumn. So in terms of autumn, it's our busiest season that we run. At the minute, we've got approximately 65 assets that go out and deliver autumn for us, and that's a combination of MPVs and the RHTTs. We did procure an additional 6 RHTTs in 2020 and 2021, so they've joined the fleet, and they allow us to have pretty much one contingency vehicle on almost all of the routes. And we're also in the process of procuring additional MPV modules and converting what were OCR wagons to MPVs, which should create additional MPV assets to supplement the fleet, likely to be 2023, I think, by the time they're ready. And again, it's hoped that they can be used as contingency, or that they can be used to replace our most heavily used MPV assets. So in 2021, we delivered almost 1 million miles of treatment during autumn. That's predominantly waterjetting, which is obviously undertaken to remove and to prevent the buildup of the leaf layer that forms on the railhead when leaves fall. So obviously where the leaves fall and the wheels run over them, it gets compacted down into the leaf mulch, which obviously then cause problems on the network. In some areas, we do also deliver a product called Sandite, which you may also have heard of as adhesion modifier. And that's essentially, it's like glue and sand mixed together. And that's deployed in some areas to increase the traction between the railhead and the wheel. And with our autumn season, that generally starts in late October to mid-December, although we tend to see Scotland normally start about a week earlier than the rest of the routes. And in the last couple of years, we have seen some extensions requested to the autumn season, where the routes are still seeing a level of issues out on the network. So again, that can be variable depending on how quickly or how slowly the leaf fall season takes place. In comparison to 2022, again this year we delivered an additional 50,000 miles of treatment in comparison to the previous year. And I think it's highly likely that we would expect to see a further increase in the treatment miles in 2022, quite likely as a result of what happened at Salisbury. I think we may well see the routes requesting additional treatment next year. And then the final point to note is that Network Rail are also currently looking at other methods of treating the leaf layer. So we're doing that through various different projects that are running through research and development. Some of those projects sit with us in the central team, but some of the projects also sit out with the routes. And at the moment, that includes looking at alternative technologies such as plasma. We're also looking at lasers, cryogenics, and there's a project around alternative mixtures of water and sandite as well, to see if we can reduce the volume of water utilised to deliver the autumn season. So there's lots of things ongoing, lots of avenues that we're looking at, and that really is the summary of my presentation. So I haven't kept an eye on questions. I don't know if someone can help me with those.
Right, right. Thank you very much, Rachel. That was really interesting. So we've had a few questions come in, and I've certainly got some myself. So the first question was asked by Paul Ebbett, and he says, "Are you thinking of using electric trains on the Southern for weed killer and de-icer, as was done in the past?"
Yeah, so I think that links to a slightly wider question. So we obviously within supply chain operations are looking at the decarbonisation strategy, whether that is electric or battery powered trains, and that's probably something that sits slightly outside of seasonal. It's probably a bit more overarching within the operations, and it's absolutely something that we've looked at. So I know that a colleague of mine has looked at where they've been reviewing the haulage contracts, for example. They have had a PIN, a prior information notice, that's gone out to the market and the industry to explore other methods of hauling all of our services, really, in an effort to align to our decarbonisation strategy and reduce our reliance on heavy diesel locos. So it's something we're probably looking at on a wider scale rather than specifically on seasonal.
Okay, right. Andy Batters asked, and I think perhaps you might invite Ben to come in on this one, but will glyphosate be banned in the UK? And if so, what is your strategy to replace this product?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Ben talk about it from a technical side, and then I can help probably maybe from a strategic, if that works, Ben.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I did answer Andy's question, and there is the license is potentially going to be extended until 2024, but we've still got use up until the end of December this year. So, but there are obviously products in the pipeline as looking at replacement, which will be involved in running trials on the train and looking at whether whether they can be used on the rails based on, because we also do things called slip tests, which they have to pass before we can use a product on the rail infrastructure, obviously because of braking distances, etc. So potentials, there is stuff in the pipeline, can't talk about them, they're under wraps. There is going to be stuff potentially to replace it, but also there's a potential for an extension, and I think it's highly likely that there will be an extension, another 5-year period. There, I suspect it will be, and it'll probably take us up until 2025.
And I think just to add to that as well, from a strategic perspective, where we're running the tender at the moment, we have obviously been aware of the potential issues around the licensing. So we have got the ability from a contractual perspective to be able to, to ask the market to look at alternatives and to be able to contract in that way going forward if we need to. So if it's the case that it does come into play from a contracts perspective, we're already thinking about it. Equally, if there's an extension granted, then we can work with that as well.
Okay, thank you both. I've got a question myself. With the new Beyer train, I got the impression from the video it's actually targeting individual groups of weeds or something like that. Is that rather than just generally spraying?
Yeah, so it's got a weed detection system on board. So I mean, I can only talk about it from a probably slightly non-specific perspective.
Yeah.
I could do with someone from Beyer on the call to help me out, but but yes, it has got a weed detection system on board. So I think the theory is there that it can detect the types of weeds and then spray the according herbicide.
Is that intended to reduce the amount of herbicide we actually use? So by targeting, so if there's no weeds, it doesn't spray.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right.
So I mean, that does happen with the MPVs. So with the MPVs at the moment, they are operator, well, in the same way as Beyer, they are operator driven. So obviously where we shouldn't be spraying herbicides, the operators don't spray herbicides. But yeah, it's probably with the technology slightly more accurate, I would imagine.
Okay. Thank you.
Rachel, it's Andy. I can just add to that question.
Thanks, Andy.
I'm not from Beyer, but I've been involved in the project, as you know. I believe, so please don't quote me, the words are it will reduce herbicide use by up to 70%.
Yeah, I don't know how correct those figures are, because I think those stats are based on the German train. So I think to be able to validate that for the UK,
qualified by the words up to rather than
yeah. So I think for the UK train, obviously it's going out this year. It's going to be delivering treatment in full, and we've got all 3 trains going out. So we will be able to definitely validate statistics like that, and be able to refer to those in the future. But I think in Germany it has significantly significantly made the process more efficient.
Well, that sounds good on both the economic front and indeed the environmental front, doesn't it? If we spray less. Andrew Wilson.
We also have to just to add a little bit more to that. We still will excuse me. We will still need to use the residual, which will be a blanket application. So the weed recognition system and the spot treatment relies basically on a very specific use of a herbicide rather than a residual one for keeping the seed germination at bay.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Ben.
No problem.
Right. So Andrew Wilson asks, timetabling, or says timetabling must be a nightmare, especially with lost turns. Will the weed killing trains be rostered into nights using lights on the train?
So
Go on, Rachel. Well, basically, probably 90% of the weed killing is done at night, based on pathing.
Yeah, it's not very easy for us to get paths in the day, as you can probably appreciate. Trying to run between passenger trains is very difficult. So yeah, most of our circuits run at night, and that's whether they run on the MPVs or on the Beyer. So obviously the Beyer train has got the advantage of being able to stay out longer from the depot than the MPVs, but where I mentioned earlier, that is obviously dependent on pathing. So one of the things that we are looking to do this year with the routes is to essentially submit the weed spray plan to them, which goes out around now, and ask them to protect the paths. So what that does is essentially it means we're not then having to get to the night of delivery and be told, oh, you can't actually run from point X to point Y. The paths are protected by the route, so they're essentially given a level of priority. Now, whether that will make a difference, I don't know. This is the first year we're trying to do it, but if we can do that, that will really make a big difference, I think, on being able to run the circuit successfully and get all of the planned treatment delivered. But we'll have to see how that goes this year.
Yeah,
Right,
I mean, just to add a little bit more to that as well. Definitely protected paths have helped in the past, and where we have been able to get them, it has made it much more successful delivery.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Right, John Calvin asked, how long does it take to change over an MPV from a railhead treatment train to a de-icer, and is it feasible in the short term? On the Wessex route, we had a very cold snap with snow and ice in November 2021, which gave significant early morning problems. I don't know, would you want to comment on?
Just repeat that first bit of the question for me, Andy.
Right, so I think the question John's asking is, how long does it take to switch an MPV over from being a railhead treatment train to a de-icing train? So he's thinking in terms of third rail de-icing, I think. And he says basically on Wessex route, we had a very cold snap with snow and ice in November 21, which gave significant early morning problems one day.
Yeah, so I'm going to be really rubbish here. I can't tell you exactly how long it takes to decommission from a weed spray to recommission to autumn, and equally decommission autumn to weed spray to recommission to winter. But what I would say is, just for clarity, the RHTTs are completely separate assets to the MPVs. So when I talk about decommissioning and recommissioning, that's solely the MPV. So if you imagine the MPV has got the wagons on the bottom and the modules are interchangeable. So the MPV is able to deliver the weed spray, the autumn and the winter season, whereas the RHTT, it solely just delivers autumn. So the RHTTs don't ever get reconfigured. What happens in out of autumn season, they go to Holgate and they get maintained, and then they come back and deliver the autumn season. The MPVs, like I say, I probably can't answer your question there, unfortunately, but it's probably a couple of weeks for them to decommission one set of modules. So they take them off in completeness, and then they put the modules back on specifically for the next season. So in this particular instance, for winter, as you'd mentioned there. So it's probably a relatively quick process, but it would depend to some extent. If we had an urgent requirement, we'd have to obviously work with the suppliers to get that done as quickly as possible. But yeah, just to clarify, the MPVs and the RHTTs are completely different assets, so we wouldn't ever switch one to the other, if that makes sense.
Right, okay. So Andrew Wilson asks, for quality control of weed killing, does the train have a video recorder? And do the Network Rail asset inspection trains also have physical video recordings suitable to track weeds?
I don't know, Ben, do you want to take that one from a
MP? Right, okay, so the weed killing trains don't have video recording for the whole of the treatment. And I think I'm 100% certain in the rail asset inspection trains, they do have video which could detect the weeds from the point of view of the videoing itself, but I don't know whether we have access to that information. So it's a no on both counts as far as I'm concerned, really, because I don't think we have access to the video recordings when they go and do the asset inspection trains, do the circuits.
Right. Certainly, I mean, I do know that we don't use the video recording off the trains for that purpose, but I can't see any reason why you couldn't have the video recordings. Though, bearing in mind, increasingly we do track geometry inspection things now at night, so you don't get much of a video recording anyway. So,
no, quite.
So, Aaron Silva asks the question, can snowplows operate on lines with equipment such as AWS, TPWS, etc.?
That's a really interesting question. last year was my first winter, and the only issue that we had was TPWs, and it was to do with the plows. The plows have to have an additional person on board because they can set off or they can deactivate the TPWS. I think it was, I can't remember exact specifics, but essentially they have an additional person that has to go out with the plows. And that's all part of the operational procedure to ensure that obviously they are operating in accordance with the network and not causing any problems.
Right, thank you. I mean, I know from a physical, practical point of view that plough, you can, if you're not careful with a snow plough, do an awful lot of damage.
Yeah.
So there have to be great care to make sure that they don't plough too low, and particularly to be aware of things like level crossings and foot crossings and things which come right up to the railhead. So
yeah. So I think it was the MOMS last year that we had written into the operational procedure, because we also had the additional complexity of COVID last year, where we had to keep everybody separate. So we had to write an entirely new operational procedure to keep all the individuals who had to go out with the ploughs in separate areas of the train. But I'm fairly certain it's the mom who has to go out and obviously has the understanding of the track and like you say, the switches and crossings, and they can advise with the plough as it goes out, perhaps where they need to, be particularly careful, or where they need to slow down. And they tend to sort of, all jokes aside, sort of hang out the front and have a look at where they're going. So yes, that's definitely included in the operational procedure, that person with that relevant competence and knowledge is on board the ploughs. But they don't get called out that often. I'm gonna eat my words now, I'm sure, but yeah, last year they definitely didn't get called out that often. So so it's not something that comes up particularly frequently.
no, it's and I think that's partly part of the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, have we any more questions? So before we move on. Right. So just one more question for me then, again with you're talking about steadily increasing volumes of spraying now, weed spraying. Is this reflecting doing more repeats, or is it reflecting the fact that we're trying to increase the coverage across the network?
I'm not really sure. I'd need to probably look into the data to be able to tell you exactly, but I would imagine it's probably a combination of an increase in the volume of scrub that we're delivering, and potentially, I suppose, the recovery shifts that we go out and redo. I don't know, Ben, whether you can perhaps add anything a little bit more specific from your side on that. Maybe not, maybe I've lost Ben, but yeah, I don't know the exact answer for that, to be fair, Andy, but I could go and look at the data and give you more specifics. But
no, just out of interest. Right, okay, so if there are no more questions, I want to put if no more questions, then can I ask Paul Daly to propose a vote of thanks, please?
Yes, thank you, Andy. I've lost the video. I don't know whether that's me or the rest of the system. Let me have a look.
Yeah,
I don't know whether you can see me or not. But as an old track engineer, and I do mean old, and someone who hasn't been in the industry for a while, the whole subject of weed spraying was a permanent problem in my day, in that the things seemed to grow after the train had been by, it was patchy, and the whole thing was just really quite disorganized. And the great thing about tonight's talk, Rachel, is you've shown me in particular how the industry has moved on and really got to grips with the issue, not just with having a new train, which is going to be very exciting if it actually does the job, but also the fact that the monitoring and the planning and the ability to go back and retreat. Now, if this is going to work, it's going to make the place a much better place in terms of weeds, because as a track engineer, it was really, really difficult in the old days to manage the vegetation. It was all over the place. So thank you for that overview. It certainly encouraged me that the industry is moving forward with this. And also too for the railhead treatment and the winter things. I mean, those of us who perhaps read the rail press know a little bit about it, but there's an awful lot goes on behind the scenes that certainly the public don't know about to keep the railway running. So I've thoroughly enjoyed the talk, and thank you for taking the time to give it to us with those slides and the pictures. And I'd like to ask everyone to join me, please, in a virtual round of applause to say thank you for all the time and effort you've put into it. Thank you, Rachel.
Right. Right. Okay, thank you very much, Rachel. I'm not quite sure what's happened to the video.
No, it's gone altogether, I think.
Yeah, that's when I'll see what we can do. Right. Right. No, I'm not sure what's happened to the video. Yeah, I think it
just says on my screen, waiting to view Rachel's screen. So I don't know quite what happened there.
No. Right. Okay. So thank you very much for that, Rachel, and indeed for Ben and Andy who joined in to support that. So for the rest of the business tonight, so our next meeting will be a lunchtime meeting, and that's because it's coming live from Australia. So it'll be at 12:30 on Valentine's Day. And we have Alex Pugh, who's a member of our section, even though he actually lives in Queensland, who's going to be talking about tunnelling under the Brisbane River. So, and then on the 14th of March, we've got HS2 track form selection with George Nicola, who's the head of engineering for HS2. So I think that should be an interesting talk, and that they've had a lot of, they went through a lot of soul searching on to decide what was the best track form for that. So that will be an interesting talk. Okay, so if there's any issues with the notes of the last meeting. Brian. Okay, so if there's no notes for that, then we'll take them as a true record of the meeting. So okay, so thank you very much, everyone, and we'll declare the meeting closed. I'll be staying on for a few minutes if anybody wants to have a chat, and I'll see if I can get the cameras working again. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.